All right.
Okay, cue the mics.
It is 6:32. We're ready to start our meeting for this evening. Present is Craig Schulte, Ben Peters, myself. Oh, and there he is, Michael Gary, along with Chris Hood and Kim Dunsmore and Mike Roth. We're all set.
Did we say Patrick?
Oh, that's right.
We always
Patrick's
leave Patrick
here
out.
running
Yeah.
the show,
Yeah.
making it happen.
Thank you,
If
Patrick.
you're watching online, you know that Patrick's here,
That's
Yeah.
right.
because you wouldn't be watching.
No guests this evening.
Snowed in.
Kind of quiet, so that takes care of open forum. So then we'll move on to our consent agenda. I have one correction for the meeting minutes, which explains our confusion, Ben, with the EDA. So
Okay.
on the notes, when we talked about the assignments, Ben's listed for the EDA.
Aha.
So we were trying to figure out where the confusion came, but that I just happened to see that. And did everyone have a chance to take a look at bills? Any questions or in that way?
Well, I don't think I got the bills in my packet, but.
They're just a link now.
I was gonna say, did you hit that
Oh.
link?
There was a link, but was there,
And are the new bills or the additional bills here or just electronic?
Just electronic.
Ah,
We've got him over in the
Was there
office, too.
something?
was there a decision that needed to be made on those
The
the
addition
new
of
tires
ones?
for the loaders? Was there a bid, there was bids, what was the deal on that?
Well, that's just a purchase order we would like to make. If you want to talk about it, then we can take it off the consent agenda and talk about it. If you don't need to talk about it, you can just approve it with the bills.
You're going with the lowest bidder, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was just wondering, I wasn't quite sure, okay.
Okay.
all right.
Anything else? Okay. Yeah, that takes care of that.
I would make a motion then to approve the agenda, consent agenda with the addition of the two bills that came in later.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Takes care of that. I was trying to remember, I thought I had one more thing on that, but.
Oh, okay, sorry. Didn't mean to
No,
jump
that's
the gun.
okay. I'm just trying to remember myself what it was. Maybe that was it. Okay.
Just the minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think maybe that is it.
And I guess I didn't say that, and with the addition of the correction of the minutes.
Yeah.
That's okay. I was just trying to
So
remember.
we're gonna approve,
So we're all good, and the street permits and the curling club application, everything's
Yeah,
fine.
these were all,
All right.
uh,
So then, you put out a motion.
I
seconded
seconded it.
it.
Okay.
Covered all those things.
And so we have a second.
I second.
Ben seconded.
All right, so we're good with that. Then we're on to,
Want to vote?
I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
sorry. That's why
That's why
Craig's
you're
here.
here.
That's right.
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Moving right along, the Afscme Agreement resolution for all of our non-union employees and their salary increases.
There's two different things there now.
Yeah.
We've got the resolution for the agreement and then.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the first one was the non-union.
You-
Oh, we've got, sorry. I thought they were,
Resolution. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
down to that. So is the first one, I'm getting there, is the first one the,
My packet's out of order.
You want?
oh, there we go. So the first one's
This page
the
right here.
the bargaining one. Okay,
Yep.
sorry, I
So
had
the
them
resolution
flipped.
that's in the
Mhm.
packet includes the summary of the changes to the contract, that's a 3-year agreement.
Yeah.
There's a few changes in terms. I think the most significant one is that we're going to start counting seniority by the start date rather than the number of hours they work for us. So that won't affect full-time employees, but it will affect our part-time employees.
Great.
just they'll be able to move up seniority a little faster. And we've got a lot of part-time employees that are valued, important, long-term members of the staff, so that's a
Yeah.
good way to recognize. And then there's also some addition of paid holiday time for part-time employees that wasn't included there before.
Yeah.
And then the 3 years, the wage increases are 8% for '23, 4% for '24, 3% for '25.
And then the one-time special wage.
Yeah, and I just was wondering what is that? Why? I guess.
It was negotiated.
What's that?
It was negotiated.
Okay, but I mean, was there any reasoning behind it? That's all.
Yeah,
I
it was springing from a lot of the COVID coming out
okay.
of other areas and.
There were some contracts in other places that included that type of
Mhm.
language.
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed. I was just curious.
Yeah, because you're right, you don't really understand what it's.
Yeah, because I went to
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
agreement
that's
and
pretty
was looking through
jargony
there. It's
too.
like,
I mean, some people might call it a bonus, but I don't think that's really an accurate way to describe it either. It's just a one-time payment.
Yeah.
And
Is
it's
that-
wages, and it'll be treated like wages, it'll be
And
taxed
taxed
like
that way,
wages.
yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's not PPE money then?
No.
No.
Do we have any, would we have some of that left? I mean,
No, not really.
I was just wondering how that was, okay.
Okay.
So,
I would make a motion if there are no more questions.
I do have,
Yeah, Ben.
I've got quite a few questions, sorry.
no, it's okay.
How long is our current, I'm assuming we have a current contract.
It's expired.
Fired.
It is expired.
Yeah.
Working without a contract.
No, they,
The
well.
contract continues on as we negotiate, so this is fairly typical that
Okay,
the existing terms continue until the new deal is
okay.
ratified.
So that answers one.
Yeah.
And so, and part of like why I'm a little bit confused is, like, in the process of negotiating, when does this begin? Here's what I'm feeling, and I'm just gonna just speak freely, and I could be totally wrong on some assumptions that I make, and I apologize if that's true, but you have two new city council members that have to immediately jump in and approve what I perceive as a historic raise increase, and we didn't have any input into the process or whatever was happening. And so the context might be helpful when we're talking about that and how that, like, where did we start, where did they start, what, you know what I mean? And so maybe some context would help me. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but,
The council started talking about their desires for the new contract as a part of the budget process. So as we were going through the budget process, which really started last maybe June, and sort of finished up, I'd say, by September, we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do. They built in a number for wage increases. And the reasoning behind what you might look at as a higher than typical number was really the idea that there's been pretty high inflation these past 2 years that our last cost of living increase didn't really address. And we're trying to catch up. And in particular, we're trying to make sure that we stay competitive locally for the folks that we need to hire. So it is a big number. It's not the biggest that we've ever done, I don't think, but it's not been our typical pattern for the past, say, 5 to 10 years where there hasn't been that type of historic upheaval and inflation.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat up the value, and I certainly don't want to beat up value employees bring, but I have to recognize a $140,000 increase is what it is, right? It's an increase that we need to account for, so.
Yeah.
Is it my understanding that we have just one city council member in those negotiations? No.
No.
Two.
We've got two that are part of it, and it was Tracy and Jay
Okay,
that did it last year.
okay,
And that's somebody that the council asks those two to participate, and so this year it'll be, well, we won't do any negotiations this year if this gets passed, but the current personnel committee that has that task is Tracy and Aaron. And,
Mhm.
they're not just like given the assignment to go negotiate. They have to talk to the council about what the council's comfortable with. and get some sort of room to negotiate with what the council's comfortable with. So that doesn't really help with your first point, which is you weren't here when those terms were talked about.
Right.
And this is just dropped in your lap.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just trying to learn and trying to figure out how this works. Okay, that was pretty much all of my other. How, like the structure of the union versus non-union, can you speak to why that's a thing, why we have both, and like, is there a class of employment or whatever that's non-union versus the union, or? not?
Everybody that's non-supervisory, and that's the term that needs to be legally defined to really understand how the split is made, is part of a bargaining unit. So employees have a right to establish a bargaining unit if they want one, and they have here, and they did quite sometime in the 90s, I think.
Okay.
And brought Afscme in as their representative. And that bargaining unit represents all of our non-supervisory employees, so seasonal park workers, librarians, liquor store clerks, utility workers, everybody that is not a supervisor. And even some people you might think are supervisors, like our property maintenance supervisor, doesn't meet the test of supervisor according to the state,
Yeah.
and so is included in the bargaining unit. So a lot of places you might find multiple bargaining units for different types of employees.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit strange that we only have one, but it's not our decision. They get to decide as employee group who they want to have.
But it's not an option for supervisory positions.
This bargaining unit doesn't include supervisory positions. Yeah, and we don't have a union for supervisors here.
Okay. Yeah, that was just one of the questions I had, because, you know, when we say, well, I think the language was, we typically offer the same terms to non-union staff as with the collective bargaining, and, well, that sort of cheapens the value of collective bargaining, right? When you know, when you're not part of the bargaining unit and you get to participate in the same increases, but
Yeah.
I guess that's just how it's typically done.
Well, I think that's a conversation that's sort of been in process for a while. How do we treat our department heads that way when it's time? But I think part of it is having a review process in place
Yeah.
to make any I mean, that's a baseline to even begin a conversation of something different. And we don't really have that very well in place yet, but we're working on it.
And when we talk about the Pay Equity Act, that's just another significant factor why we want to treat the non-union and the union the same with the cost of living increases, because we don't get to differentiate between them when we have to report pay equity compliance. Everybody has to fit on that same regression line. So if we start moving people at different percentages, they go above or below that line faster, and it makes that harder to do.
Well, that was kind of the discussion we had earlier in the year about moving some of the entry-level pay, trying to get that moved up.
Yeah, right?
And I understand the importance of that, and I understand to stay competitive in the realm of hiring new people versus, you know, kind of in a different situation with our city. We have 3 businesses that we're running to along with the city, and most cities don't have that situation. So
Right.
we are competing with employees in our businesses that the city is running. But we also, I anyway, think about if we need to increase that lower paid entry-level job 10%, 12%, then does that, you know, to automatically take that increase and take it all the way up to a department head status, we're not doing the system any good. We're kind of making more of a disparity. In a way, in another
Yeah.
way, I think a department head job, anyway, should be based on a lot of things. Whether you're doing a good job, merit, what's your job description? What are all the things you're doing to obtain that pay, you know? I'm just looking at, I don't know, I look at an 8% increase, and I think that's a pretty healthy increase for some people, but maybe not so good for others.
So last year.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to,
Last year, our contract was a one-year contract. And one of the reasons we had a one-year contract was because we really didn't know how the economy was going to behave.
Right.
And we wanted to wait and see before we started committing ourselves to future decisions. One of the things we offered for last year's contract was to change the slope of the line. So to move up the lower salaries faster than the higher salaries.
during the.
During the bargaining.
With the union.
And that's something that we
Yes.
have to bargain with the union, because
Okay.
they have to agree to what our salaries are gonna be. And they didn't wanna do that, and so we didn't have that option.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was.
So, to your point.
So it isn't just our side when we think through how this comes together. But I get exactly what you're saying about department heads, but that gets back to my comment to Ben, that there's really nothing in place to even begin a conversation of how that could look different. Because we need to have a review process, first of all, right, to react to or act to or whatever. And we don't really have that right now.
But if we do a 3-year, and maybe this is already done and we're just talking about it, but, if, then there's nothing in the next 3 years that says we're gonna begin that conversation.
No, doesn't mean it's still, everything, yeah, I have to think of it bigger, longer, right?
No.
It doesn't mean you still don't put these things in place.
Yeah.
How much difference they make, and we still don't know what that would look like anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
But you still would get it in place, there's a lot to be done, it takes
Mhm.
a while, and people have to get used to it and the whole deal, but it's a starting point.
Yeah.
And how does that work with, you're dealing with the union then if?
It's-
Well, I think
it's-
we're just talking
Full-
non-union, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Focusing on non-union. And how much difference may, we don't know, but it's just part of it, and I think it's just better management in general, and I
Yeah.
think it's beneficial to those employees too,
Yeah.
for that recognition of work well done, the whole deal. But-
Yeah.
So you're right. How much it influences the next 3 years, don't know, but I'm trying to think bigger than the next
Yeah.
3 years.
I mean, we can look at the delinking, but I think it would take us putting something,
Give us some
all
time
of
to
us
think that
putting
through
something
too.
different in place.
It's just, it's a lot.
And where part of that comes from me is like, we're a little bit of a unique city government, right? Where we operate in some things that are very public sector, right? And then there's some that are quasi-private, right? Or whatever, for-profit liquor,
Right.
campground, golf course, et cetera, right? And then the other part is like, well, we provide a lot of public services, right? Which is pretty common of all government, right? So how to manage those elements in the context of employment and scale and pay and union, non-union, it's pretty cloudy. And one thing that seems lacking, or that is just that base pay and incentive, right? Or that like what Craig was saying, right? Where maybe there's goals, or maybe
Some
there's
type of-
there's things, targets that are hit or met, or
And now
whatever
you're talking for
that
the
looks like.
non-union.
For sure, yeah.
Well, we
because
do,
can't
like,
probably
when
we
do
do-
anything about the union.
That
right?
is what we're talking
Yeah.
about, and that's part of a
Yeah.
review process, and I think, to me, it's a timing, so that as we start to look at our budget and what the city's priorities are, then that starts to flow into their goals for the next coming year. I mean, there has to be a rhythm to it that you get
Yeah.
established,
Right.
but all that isn't in place right now. So it needs to be, at least that's how I feel about it, and we've got that started,
Yeah.
but.
Something just crossed my mind. How does the library fit into this? Because we do their budget,
They're city employees.
okay. So maybe I'm mistaken, but when we reviewed that budget and approved it, I thought, was there some pay increases already put in place for?
For all the budgets, that was true. Like, we
So
assumed
then
an
does this-
amount of pay increase.
Yeah, but I mean, I saw it physically on paper, last year's,
Right.
this year. How does this 8% fit into that then? Is this on top of that increase?
Nope, this is
This is
inside
part-
of, as a matter of fact, it's below what we had.
So this is
included.
part of the increase going forward for the next year, for this year?
But it was already there, so it's not
It was already,
adding to
it was,
It's not
the number I
this is-
saw was already,
Yes.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
And it's under what was budgeted.
So there's city employees then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure how, I know it's a county-city operation, and I'm not sure
Oh.
how much of that budget is, you know, when
Yeah.
David Mills was here talking, they were talking about the county part of it, and then, you know, there was some questioning about their endowment fund or whatever they have. Are they gonna be using any of that money for budgeting or whatever? And, you know, they're choosing not to, but that's why when you brought that up, I thought, okay, how much of that is county money, how much of it is city money?
That, when you start to think about that, like which sources of funding are we using to pay these wages?
Yes.
The amount that's paying wages that comes from property taxes is far less than half. There's a lot of wages that are supported by utility rates. There's a lot of wages that are supported by the profits at the campground and at the liquor store. There's a lot of wages that are supported by other outside entities, like the county pays half of the costs at the library.
Okay.
Is there an official breakdown on that? I've never seen anything like that.
I mean, that's the budget.
That's just
yeah.
how it is, okay.
I mean, we can show you some
Yeah, maybe sometime I'd be
simplified
interested to
versions of
know
that to try
what
to
portion is.
summarize it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
isn't, which reminds, this is from before, I may not be saying this right, but isn't there a point where if it's a certain amount, then the county has to agree to it?
With the library agreement, if
Yeah.
it's above 5%, then they get to decide whether they agree with it. If it's below 5% and you approve it, then they're obligated to approve it.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it may have to pony up the other side.
Does that help a little bit, some of this?
Yeah, no, it answers a lot of questions about the process, which is what I was most interested in.
Well, it'll be interesting to know how they negotiate. I mean, when the union stuff is negotiated, I don't know if I don't know, I guess I'm used to sitting here thinking, okay, we have these things in front of us, and we can look at this, we can look at that, we can look at this. What do we feel we can try to do? I mean, we kind of have a range to work with, you know, on some issues. This seems to be negotiated out at a range of 843, and that's
Rubber stamp it.
it's kind of rubber stamped, I mean, so
No,
to speak. I'm not, you know,
Okay,
the point I'm making is we're doing this to follow along with the union. has
oh,
done.
that part of it. I thought you
Right.
meant the initial one with just the union employees. How does that happen?
Well, I don't know. They probably throw a number out and you guys gotta,
They
Throw another number
they
out.
come with their list of what they want, which isn't just always money.
no, I
There's
know.
you know what I
Oh,
mean?
there's other
other
stuff. Yeah.
items.
Yep, there's
And
items.
then we can react to that and give our suggestions, and it kind of goes back and forth and off their list. And then, like Mike said, ultimately, they decide like how they want to set where they want to put the money and their
Yeah.
timeframes or lengths of service and all of that.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, the other part is sort of a straight through
Yeah.
when you put it to the non-union people.
Well, we're not asking for non-union salaries for you to make any commitments on that past this year. We just need to know what to write in people's paychecks now, and the longer we wait, the more complicated it gets to go back in time and get it sorted out.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
But the contract for the union that's in front of you is for a 3-year deal.
yeah.
Anything more?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
would someone
anything
like to
more,
make a
Craig?
motion?
I mean, I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-03, the Afscme Agreement, and non-union salaries.
You can make those separate if you prefer. Might be easier.
What motion did you make?
For the resolution that we have, plus the non-union salaries, or we can divide them, we can separate them out if you wish.
You made a motion on the first part of it? The resolution?
I made a resolution for I made a motion
Oh, for both. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I can divide them out if that
Alright.
would be better for you.
Um,
Do you have any other questions, Craig?
Yeah.
I guess I don't, unless you have any more, and then I kind of got some answers, but I understand what Tracy said, we don't have any. I don't know, I'd like to see a different timing of a process maybe. Would that help?
What do you mean?
For the beginning initial conversations or this one now?
Yeah. Well, for.
You mean going
well,
forward?
This might be, yeah.
Like something to work on
Yeah.
in the future?
Yeah.
Okay. I get that.
Yeah.
You know. So,
Should we add that to our list?
Yeah, I think a lot of
So-
what both of you are asking is something we're already trying to work on.
So if I understand.
Yeah, I know.
So-
I know. So if I understand the motion, and approve the union for the 3-year contract, and we're approving on a, for the non-union for committing
1
to the
year.
year.
Yeah. That's.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. And responses on this?
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Next up is the ordinance 2023-01, and this is our second reading, so we're going to clear up the language for the 90-minute parking just above First and Highway 61 on the northeast corner. And then,
There was something else.
oh, I see, you made some language. I didn't catch the towing language change, I apologize. And that was the only cleanup from our other reading. Any comments, thoughts? All seems clear. Does anyone want to look at the map again? I asked Patrick to make sure it was handy if anyone wanted to have that visual.
Just a second.
Yep.
Yep.
Are we good?
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm good with it.
All right. I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-01 as modified.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
We'll put this in the newspaper. At this point, it'll be next week's edition, and that's when it will take effect.
Got it.
Groovy.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks for getting all that little cleanup stuff done too. It's kind of nice in there.
That's why it took an extra month to finish that conversation, because we found a few things. I think that's a good process, too.
No, for sure.
Make a policy change and then find a few other things and do them, too.
Yeah. All nice and tight. Oh, here we go.
All right, so now my PDF is being funky, so now I'm gonna look at yours. So next up is the Pay Equity Compliance Act. Anything on that you want to comment on, Kim? She muted? No.
Second. There she is.
So the pay equity compliance, we have to do this every 3 years, and after putting in our current data for 2022, I pointed out that the underpayment ratio is less than the required 80%, so it needs to be 80% and above to be compliant, or it can be below 80%, and you can have a T value of 1.684 or less, which our T value calculated to 1.917. I don't know all the formula that goes into it. This is a state report, and you input the data and print your compliance report. So because our t-value is statistically significant according to the calculation, we looked at the lineman job. So if you look at the chart where everybody's kind of shown in that line graph, that blue diamond kind of in the middle of the range there is the line workers. And we've paid them more on a market value because, we have Arrowhead Electric not too far away that pays more than we do. We never replaced the electric superintendent because the linemen we had wanted to work as a team. So they are doing some of that superintendent job, so there is support to relook at their job, make sure it's doing what they're doing and that the points correlate with their duties. That would bring us into compliance. So I'm asking that the personnel committee relook at that job description and their points. And I'm asking that you approve this pay equity report because I have to submit it before the 31st. And we will have time once they tell us if we're non-compliant to fix it. So I just assume to be proactive and get started.
That sounds a very good idea. Maybe that's like a little mini start to some of this, a little bit. It's not quite the same as what we're talking about.
So basically,
later.
you're just taking and you're sliding the points associated with their job so they fit somewhere on this graph and smooth that line out, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
Right.
They'll still be
basic.
above the graph, but that bulge in the line that's created by them will flatten a little bit.
Bring you into compliance.
It'll bring us back. And what it'll change is not the underpayment ratio, but the statistical significance. If you look at where those points show up on that line graph, this is what we're aiming for, is a straight line regression that's just pure. That there's a formula that says pay equals this many dollars plus this many dollars per point, and that's how you draw that line. And that's what we're aiming for, and the reason why, if we talk about moving supervisor salaries at a different speed than the other salaries, they're going to get off of that line, either above or below it, and then we'll have a different issue to deal with.
Yeah, so when you look at those lines, the green circles are a balanced job where there are both female and male workers. The yellow squares are female-dominated jobs, and the blue diamonds are the male-dominated jobs.
I mean, this statute was passed in the 80s, and it was intended to address an issue at the time that remains an issue in a lot of places, that female-dominated jobs are paid less than equally male-dominated jobs that require equal types of training experience, all those sorts of things. Some of our predecessors here have tried to pass these tests by grabbing a female-dominated job and giving it a one-time raise to get it above the line instead of below the line, for instance. And that sort of games doesn't work because they don't stay female and male-dominated positions. We don't have very many positions that don't switch back and forth every once in a while. So that's why it's our goal to try to get everybody on the line, except for the one job that we have specifically said we need to pay more than this line, this formula would generate, because from a market perspective, we just have to compete.
Right.
And this is the consequence of that. We're not quite meeting it.
Plus, it's not like we have large departments with lots of staff to.
Yeah, what's the
balance.
biggest population of any of these jobs? 4 or 5, something like that, for a part-time job, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so 1 or 2 people, well, first of all, just the male-female thing's hard to really, and then you get the pay thing, 1 or 2 positions can really influence something.
Yeah.
So, these kind of stats don't work particularly well with small numbers.
Yeah, you get big swings.
So then the remedy is to, you have to assign more points to that job?
Yeah.
We think there's good justification for it too, so that's our preferred remedy, yeah.
So then effectively, you're just taking that dime and
Yeah,
sliding.
so I mean, I'm looking at 160 points, looking at, what, 190?
Wouldn't have to be on the line in order for us to be in compliance.
Right, 'cause
Oh,
you
okay.
just missed it.
So
Yeah.
when we talk about changing those points, we'll go through the same review process we use when we evaluate any job for points. And when Kim mentioned that we don't have an electric superintendent,
Right.
that's really the trigger that makes it easy for us to go through and look at some of those criteria, like what's your source of work direction? What's your level of responsibility and decision-making? What's your budgetary authority? Some of those things have really effectively changed for that job since there's not an electric superintendent.
So in this case, do you feel good that it's actually, there is this work that they are doing? And we aren't just going
Yep.
through trying to read
Yeah.
things around. We're
No,
asking,
no,
a
for
lot
sure.
more
No,
for
I
them.
understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels good to me that we have a plan, because this report that we're asking you to approve says we are not in compliance.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Right.
So basically, though, just tonight, we're just approving the report. or-
Yep, and we'll submit it, and then,
See if it-
before we even hear from them that we didn't meet the test, we'll be getting the personnel committee together to talk about how to move forward.
So,
Okay.
All right. Well, I would move to approve the report.
I'll second that.
any other discussion?
It's submitted.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Ooh, council and staff reports. And before we start that, I'd just like to one more time, if Patrick, or is that going to be you, Mike? We'll put up the city weekly report, and also I'd like to just highlight the letter that Neil Hansen got from the MPCA for, we're going to be participating like many other municipalities around the state with the study for the PFAs. And so we are among many municipalities that have agreed to be, they'll be watching and testing to see what's in our waters. And they're doing that also with industrial sites around the state. And it's just helping them put together an action plan long-term to figure out how to deal with this. But it's helping them get data. And I think they're going to try to do a few things too, right between, if I read their plan, in between some of the testing quarters, they'll even ask us to do a few things at the city water to see if it makes any difference. So we got a little thank you for offering to participate in that. And
If anybody wants to see this full report from the MPCA
Yeah.
about their monitoring plan, it's available.
I pulled it up and took a gander through it today. So there's that, of course, available. So it's phase one of their planning process. But I'll be doing our part for the city. And then our weekly report, what's the hot item, you think, Patrick?
I thought one of the cooler photos was of the
Not gonna
community
find it.
connector.
Oh, right. So that's really through the park board. Maybe you're going to have your park board
Oh, that's
report on
right.
this too, right,
Yeah.
Craig?
Wasn't listening, sorry. I mean, I think I was reading the
Busted.
same thing he was talking about. so I
Yeah.
just-
The middle connector.
Except they don't
The
remember.
connector corridor.
Oh, from the park, no, I'm
Yeah.
talking about,
21st.
yeah, we talked about the park community connection thing already. That was the meeting
No,
before
that's not it.
this meeting. I'm talking about Parks and Trails, okay.
Oh,
This was
okay.
on.
Yeah, no, that was put out for bid,
Mm-hmm.
to see what we could get, yeah, update that bid, see if we get a new number.
There
I
we
don't
go.
know what, I don't think anything came back yet, did it? No.
No. but
No,
it's-
the current
Oh,
schedule
the drawing, yeah.
is that the bids will be, the request for bids will be released next week. Folks
Okay.
will have a few weeks to get them back.
That's the
numbers will be
visual.
ready for the park board to look at in February,
Yeah.
and then we'll know
We
where
just-
we stand.
Yeah.
So that's one of our featured articles on our weekly report, is the Parks Report, with that as the subject matter. So once again, if you are not signed up to get this newsletter, please contact the city and we'll get you on that email list.
And since you said that, I made it more prominent so folks can, I mean, by all means contact me if that's the easiest thing for you, but it's also right on the front page of the website you can sign up.
Ah, nice, make it easier. Great. I think that's really nice, get timely, let department heads say what they're up to, so.
Yeah.
All right, so back to council and staff reports. Who's going first? Which direction?
I got nothing.
Well, then I guess it's Craig.
Okay, we had a Parks and Trail meeting. And I guess a lot of the stuff we discussed was still around, we don't have a Parks and Trail director position, and I don't think that that's really gonna honestly happen with the budgets that we're all working with today. So I think there's been a lot of discussion of how to reach out to certain departments within the county and maybe work together to formulate a way to organize and make the Parks and Trails Commission be more organized, I guess, so that we can report things to the city and to the county and to work with in that respect. So we're still kind of working with the community center. They have the park up there. So I mean, I don't know, we're just kind of kicking around we don't have a person hired to run the group, so to speak. So we're just all trying to work together. And there was some discussion about, what movability or do we have with our rec park and our director, and do they want to be involved in, do we want to be involved in and I'm kind of thinking, well, it all boils down to no. I mean, it all boils down to labor, and it all boils down to what are they doing already? Are we having trouble staffing what we're running already? And I think a lot of people do run into that, but at least I think it's important to have this group in a way. I mean, I know for a while there it wasn't meeting, but yet it is a group that people can come to and say, hey, how do I get this answer? Or how do I go about researching something or looking into something, and then we can take it, hey, this has got to go before the city, or this has got to go before the county, or maybe it's got to go before both entities, because we're all dealing with parks and trails, whether they're in the city or in the county, or they're crisscrossing, different avenues. But so that was part of a lot of our talk. And also deals with land, so maybe we're talking about, bringing land commissioner in with different departments. So Tim is kind of looking into all of that, try to plan that out. Other than that, I don't know. There was monies. I think there was a $400,000 grant awarded to the county from the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails. And so now we're trying to form how that money is going to get distributed in a fair way to the entities, and how to come up with people come in and request money, so we have to have a way to give that money out
Right.
in a proper way. So that was one thing that was brought up at this meeting. We have the new chairman will be Randall Knutson, and Adam Treefel is the vice chair. And so Shane is on that board. Mary Lou Sorensen is on that board. Paul Norland's on that board. Bobby Deschamps. And then we have John Benson from the U.S. Forest Service, and I don't think we have anybody from the Minnesota DNR right now. And then Tim Nelson. So those are the people that you can contact if you're interested on anything that's going on with the Parks and Trails. The other meeting we had was this morning actually, Safety Committee. And basically, setting up a schedule for safety training for 2023. And that's kind of what we went through today, is just what training is coming up through the year, starting, I think they had some training this morning on bloodborne pathogens, and then, of course, you know, you look at, this is the training that the city has to go through with OSHA, with the MMUA, Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association. So they go through, you know, their safety scenarios, traffic safety, electric safety for the guys with that bucket trucks. There's first aid, there's CPR training, there's fire safety, slips, trips, and falls training. And that will be happening throughout the course of the year. And the guy was here today just basically trying to get a schedule set up because he travels to different municipalities. And so it's more of a scheduling meeting. I guess that's it. Basically safety within the city. Forms that guys have to fill out and keep up to date. Building equipment, inspecting equipment, ladder forms, ladder equipment, stuff like that, for the safety of the city. So that's about all I have.
I didn't have any official meetings, so I got to do some tours, got to meet some city staff, the library, and schedule some other stuff with Chris at the liquor store. Tour of that facility, and then
Did you get your library
went to
card?
North House. I did not get a library card.
You don't have a library card? Come on,
Library card.
Oh,
I drove by it 3 times. I couldn't even find it. No, I got a tour of the North House. It was good. Got to sit down with a couple their board members, and they toured me through and walked me through what they were offering and their classes and all that stuff, and got to see the campus, and it was kind of slippery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, other than that, it wasn't nothing to report back though.
You'll have a new meeting pretty soon. Before you know it, you'll have some committee meeting and you'll be,
Won't be new,
Busy.
unfortunately. The planning commission next week.
yeah.
oh,
Got planning commission.
well, there you go. I saw in the paper you have things in front of you, too. Saw the notice.
Wait, what?
I don't think I've seen the packet yet for that.
Hasn't been sent out.
Yeah.
Still piling stuff in there.
I don't think it'll be that big.
No,
Okay.
always fun.
I had, since our last meeting, had to look on my calendar. I had several more meet and greets, so because I'm now on the emergency preparedness group, I met with Mike Keyport and learned how I'm going to learn more, online classes and whatever. And I learned the most important thing is just to stay out of the way and don't say things you shouldn't say. And I can do that.
Well, I mean, that's on the
can't do
list.
that.
I don't think that's the most important thing.
No, we kind of clarified that there's nothing worse than someone speaking out of place during a time of a,
Crisis. Right?
yes, you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, in jest. Though one of the things, speaking of which, that did come out, I asked about the whole Christmas holiday fund, and there were some real issues with the county, with the sheriff's office, and a lot of it had to even do with computers off and off, on and off, and battery backups, and generators not working, and they did incur some significant costs in hardware replacement, and part of it, we don't have a lot of huge weather events like other parts of the country, and it sounds like maybe we need to be a little bit more prepared between all of our units, especially because we are the ones supplying that backup power. So we talked a little bit about that and some communication things, but I'm sure we'll work on it through that committee. But it turns out there were some issues that probably surprised everyone maybe. Not to mention, of course, the fact that the sheriff's office got overwhelmed with phone calls during all of that. So that was interesting. And then he is going to do, like Jim Wienanen has always done, the big like emergency meetings, and they do those trial, or not trial, that's not the right word, but
Tabletop exercises and such.
yeah, and then like real life scenarios, right? And they all work. And is some of the units that he's got coming and things they're going to test sounds really interesting, but they're going to do that at the end of April again. They're going to test out some mini communication towers that are there. They've got someone bringing in a helicopter. They're going to do some water rescue demonstration. So, I mean, just even to watch some of this could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big event that we've done for a long time. I know it's interrupted with COVID, right? So there's a lot of enthusiasm to have that up. And then the end result of that is I also asked him when he's done with all that and with the big races coming up, because he's, in charge of all that, he's going to come and give a short presentation for us too. Sometime after May, we'll check in and just explain what that whole group does. Then on the EDA, I ended up with, I believe, 3 EDA meetings. So we had, I got my onboarding with Myron, but we also were invited, both Dave Mills and I, as county and city representatives, as they began their conversation about deciding Beth Dross' replacement and how they will handle that. So we had one initial meeting here about that conversation. And
Is there somebody that's in charge interim?
yes, Pat Campanero is their interim director, and we just also talked just a little bit, because I said, it's hard to bring a lot of commentary or thought to this because I'm not even clear what the priorities are of the EDA now, because a couple of your larger things are to some extent off their plate.
Right.
I mean, we have an HRA director now.
Yep.
They've got the county got the child care grant, and between the Health and Human Services and, correct me if this isn't right, Nancy Deming from Lake County will also be helping, I believe that's the right name, be helping move a lot of the daycare forward. So Steve told me, those are obviously still big items, but then the other two that right now are important is the business park and the golf course. Are there 2 other items that they, at this point in time, they're still getting themselves, they got a lot to do. So we talked about that. Then I did follow up with Scott Waterhouse. We had a little conversation, and I am looking into, leash laws and all of that from him coming to visit.
Yeah.
So I'll keep working at that. I'm going to talk. I just set up a meet and greet with Pat Eliason, and I told him that was one of the things I'd like to talk to him about, because I'm sure he has info and input as well. And then today I was up in Grand Portage and met with Bobby Deschamps and his group, and asked what are their big issues, and they mirror the whole rest of the county: housing, daycare, employment. And they have all a real concern also, well, of course, always medical care, but then drug-related issues, which we know the pandemic certainly didn't make any better a lot of places. And they have a lot of concern with that. And I said, well, anything supportive the city can do, things like that. And tomorrow I'm going to go meet with Kate Serba for Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. And am I missing anything on my list here? I don't think so. I think that was it. Yeah. Oh, you had nothing.
He's nothing.
No,
Well
I was
then.
looking at you because I was wondering if you had something.
Mm-hmm.
A quick reminder, thank you all for scheduling a work session next Friday, February 3rd at 1 o'clock, where we will have LHB join us virtually to continue the conversation about City Hall Liquor Store building. And then after that, we will take up a conversation about the North House lease.
Yeah.
So bring dinner.
Oh, there was one more item of information. I'm getting good at this, aren't I?
She's like Dave Mills now.
Well, this was a really positive one. I wanted an update on where they were at with the replacement needs for the loss of our Coast Guard, and Bobby said they do have a bill in place in front of the legislature for funding on that, which I was unaware
That
of.
presentation that they, were you here for that?
Well, I was, but I didn't think they had a bill ready.
No, they had a
They had the
dollar amount
letter.
ready, and I'm kind of going, well, let's see where this goes with the bills. I mean, yeah.
What
it's-
is, so walk that.
Well, they came before, whatever, go ahead.
So if the Coast Guard goes away, the Sheriff's Department is responsible for
Right.
patrolling up 10 miles out.
Right, so
the
they
entire
kind of came up with a
county.
budget, a piece of the equipment that they may need, how to operate it, how to run it, to provide our own security up here.
Yeah, it'd take a lot.
And so they've got a bill going through, so
Mm-hmm.
it was,
For boats and staffing, he said. for
Yeah.
both.
What was the dollar amount?
I'm just.
I can't
was it
remember now, it was a lot.
1.7
It's a
million, or was it more
little,
than that?
yeah, I think it's a little bit more than that
Might
now.
get you in the door.
It was a lot of money.
Those boats are.
Because, I know the Border Patrol already has a boat like that, but I'm not sure how they can use it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, they've got their own charge.
And we are definitely done. Like, if you go on the Coast Guard's
Customs
map,
says too,
we don't
it's not been
exist
stopped by
anymore.
them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the board, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just think with the Coast Guard being void here, it has a potential for, it's a big hole in the area that they cover.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Thunder Bay has. I don't know what the Canadian government has that comes out of Thunder Bay, but I'm just saying they could, they can help cover Isle Royale, obviously quicker than Michigan can, obviously quicker than we can, but whether they will or not, the Canadians, I don't know. I'm just saying, we have a lot of water to take care of up here, especially in summertime with the sailing and the fishing and the boating. It's just too bad that that's
Yeah.
how the Coast Guard, it's too bad they couldn't keep this open as a training facility for new people going into the Coast Guard. It'd be a great place to train, and provide service for.
Oh, now you come up with a good
I
idea.
came up with that a long time ago. The government moves real slow. I mean, to me, it'd be a great place to, hey, this is a
Those
great.
trainees probably prefer it to be Miami, I think.
Well, true, but if you're gonna be a Great Lakes Coast Guard, because, they do have Great Lakes Coast Guard that, Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake
Well,
Ontario.
I looked,
Lake
that's
Superior.
our whole district,
Lake
right?
Superior.
And you look on the map, we are gone now. And it's kind of frightening to see on that map that there's nothing on the north side of Lake Superior, all the way back to, just nothing.
Yeah.
So, Mike Keyport did
Including safe
mention
harbors, yeah.
that Michigan does have a better helicopter than they used to if they need to come over here to assist. But still.
That's still.
Long, cold week.
And Pat also had mentioned before with us that a lot of it is just even compliance, being able to patrol and make sure these boats are in compliance with what they need to have on board and all of that.
Well, that's the thing, it was nice when I still have a boat, but when you have your boat down there in the slip and you got the Coast Guard guys there hanging around, you could walk over and say, hey, you guys got time, you want to inspect my boat? Yeah, we'll come over, what day? And they'll come over, walk on your boat, do an inspection, that kind of thing is nice. Now, we don't have that until you get picked up and get inspected, and then they tell you what's wrong with your boat. Or, you're supposed to know what you need to do, but yet, having those compliance checks
Yeah, just to know what safety equipment.
keeps
you have to
everybody
have.
safe,
Yeah. Right.
not just,
Or your flares are expired.
well,
Right.
yeah, right. Probably are, too.
3 years.
They have been since 2020, probably. Yeah, well, So that's interesting to see that they moved ahead with something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going pretty well.
Although-
So
Yeah.
we'll listen and keep in contact and, see if there's anything else we can lend to it, but it sounds like they're doing a pretty good job with getting that go forward, so.
That's great.
There, now I'm absolutely done,
For sure.
Excellent.
so.
So what do we now?
Has everyone gotten their contact info out to their new assignments? And is everyone, I wonder if James Yorkie has sent out a community leadership meeting announcement out to people yet?
I haven't received it, I talked to him.
Okay.
And made sure he had my email.
Okay, good.
I think it happened the day after your last council meeting.
Okay.
So he had sent it out before your last council meeting.
Cool. Alright. Well, okay, then I believe we are all done for this evening. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.